Hello, my name is Arnie Herz, and welcome to Habits of a Whole Heart, here as part of the Humanity Matters series on the Holocaust Memorial Tolerance Center, hmTv, where all the episodes could be found on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and all the major outlets. This is my second episode with Ira Kohler, who's a young 26-year-old man who, after graduating from college after 3 years, volunteered to fight in the IDF. This was pre-October 7th, and as fate would have it, Ira was on duty on October 7th and quickly found himself that day in combat. Ira, in the first episode, you shared about your journey, about your calling to serve in the IDF, your upbringing in Plainview, New York, and your incredible decision to actually follow your dream and to fight in the IDF, notwithstanding its tremendous challenges that brought. Thank you for being here with me for the second episode. And as I mentioned in the first episode, Ira wrote an incredibly riveting book called Once, a Paratrooper, the story of a lone soldier in the Gaza war. And now we're going to bring this forward to October 7th, a fateful day, October 7th, 2023.
Yeah.
You were in a base in the Judean Desert and ready to start a training session that very night.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, your phone was buzzing like crazy. Everyone's phone was buzzing. And before you knew it, you were on a helicopter taking off for the Gaza envelope across Israel. And you're looking out the windows, and you're sharing the beauty and the tranquility underneath. And as you approach the Gaza envelope, everything changes in a heartbeat. Your helicopter is attacked by a Hamas rocket. The awareness that with the fuel being full, if the next rocket if it hits the tank, the entire helicopter will explode and everyone will be killed. The tanks are dropped on purpose to prevent that from happening. Nonetheless, one engine is out, and there's a crash landing. And as you land, you hear all the bullets through the window that you just peered through. Your bullets are coming through, and you have to evacuate the helicopter. And after evacuating the helicopter, it's hit, blown up to pieces, massive fire. And there you are in the midst of bullets being fired by terrorists. What was that like?
You just did everything, the entire book. I'm joking. You just went through the prologue of the book, and where I get a little bit of the teaser, and then I had to come back later in the book. At those moments where it's around 11:42 a.m. on Saturday, October 7th, and the helicopter made an emergency landing in an open field in the Gaza envelope, right across from Kibbutz Alumim, if you look at a net. We landed there under attack. Our helicopter was just hit by a rocket, and now we were under gunfire. And the decision was made, well, do we stay inside this helicopter that was just under attack and could be under attack again by another rocket, or do we disembark and do we engage with the terrorists that are attacking us? And the decision was easy and clear. We had to disembark. And the reason is that a helicopter is a target. It's a pressurized can where we're all 50 plus soldiers are stuck inside, and if a rocket comes and hits it, that could be it for everyone. We disembark into an open field and are immediately under gunfire, we get down and start shooting back at terrorists that are firing our way. And moments after we all left, another rocket strikes the helicopter, destroying it to its core. Thankfully, only after the last soldiers were evacuated. And we're in this open field fighting. Literally, as if you picture a war movie, there was nothing else when I started this that even comes close to movie-like as these moments. We're in an open field, and we are just responding with fire with these terrorists that are shooting our way, getting down behind our Arnie bags, because those are the only things protecting us, and just shooting.
And those army bags you demonstrated were
Yeah.
a barrier that later several people found bullets.
Several people found bullets. A lot of people found bullet holes. Those bags were packed the week before. As you mentioned, Arnie, we were preparing for a war exercise, which is basically a simulation. We go out into the fields for a week to simulate being in a war. And the week before that, we were on the base, as you mentioned, in the Judean Desert with the one and only task of literally just preparing for the war simulation. And those bags filled with, and I mentioned it, I talked about the details in that book, filled with our bullets and ammunition, filled with our change of clothes, our food, our random other gear, all packed inside, were now these huge bags that we, instead of carrying them on our backs, they were plopped down in this flat, open dirt field, and we got behind them, and they served as makeshift barriers, and they saved some of our lives.
And it wasn't without casualties. Your friend Joe was shot.
Yeah, there was thankfully not a single person was killed in this incident, and there were several people who were injured, including Joe, as you mentioned, who was a lone soldier as well, and he was shot and evacuated on another helicopter that arrived to the region, and from there taken to treatment.
It's really amazing how, in the situation, the thin line between life and death, and each decision is so critical, could have changed things so dramatically, and how really, when you think about it from big picture, reading your book, it's a miracle, as you said.
Yeah, a miracle.
What's a miracle?
A miracle is that not a single person was killed. The fact that our helicopter was hit midair, literally, like, when I say hit, to the point where we're standing on this helicopter and it was like a huge earthquake. We all fell to the ground. The fact that the rocket didn't hit the helicopter in the center of the body and would have penetrated inside, but rather the bottom and caused the earthquake, miracle number one. The fact that the second rocket didn't hit the helicopter until after we all left and didn't kill a single soldier, miracle number two. The fact that the bullets that were flying our way didn't kill a single person was the third miracle. In all, it was truly incredible. Everything that happened, I'm not going to say it was perfect. We were attacked in Israeli territory with Hamas rockets. An IDF helicopter was destroyed, which is obviously seen as a victory for Hamas, and there were several people injured. But all in all, the fact that every single person survived truly, truly is miraculous.
Did you feel some level of divine protection? Do you believe in God?
Wow, now we're switching. Now this is like a religious podcast now. I definitely didn't feel anything in the moment. I definitely was more worried for my life, and I'll also say I was high on adrenaline, where I wasn't even really, there wasn't even really time to think. It was just autopilot.
How about now, though, as you've had a chance to reflect?
You're asking me about God.
So you didn't
now?
think, you thought this podcast was going to be the questions I asked you beforehand, but this is
you're like we were talking about what happened on October 7th, and now you're like, does God exist? Yes, but it's not as simple as just yes. It's obviously a more complicated question.
Because it would be interesting, again, for at some point to delve into, like you say, these miracles happen, but for 1 in a 10 million chance, you're here, and people were, again, there was a huge cost on October 7th, but it's really, I look at life sometimes when you see, like, why is it that it's, and a certain meant to be aspect to it.
Yeah, how is it that we all survived this? And I genuinely say that. Some people can look at this and say, well, I don't know, you survived and that's great. So how crazy was it? It was crazy. It was, you see a rocket hitting your helicopter and you see the helicopter. I don't know if we could show a picture on the podcast that you can look up in my book. The helicopter was on fire, completely destroyed. And we're fighting there. It's on here in the next page. I don't know if you can really see it.
See this?
That it's up here. You can see the helicopter is on complete fire, and we're standing there in that open fields, returning bullets against Hamas terrorists as we see a helicopter to our right engulfed in flames as the same helicopter that we just escaped from.
And here it is, packed with 50 troops.
Yeah, so this
like
is a
sardines.
picture. I don't know if the podcast could see it well, but
People have to buy the book. Once a Paratrooper.
that's a good plug for the book. If you wanna see
Ira
the
Kohler.
if you want to see the pictures, you got to buy the
Yeah.
book. But I listen. You'll see the picture that Arnie was just referring to. Something that we didn't mention yet. These helicopters were basically they're called Yasor helicopters. They're transport. They're supposed to. The whole purpose is bring soldiers from location A to location D. They're supposed to fit around 30 soldiers in the back. But because of the situation at hand and because our battalion with over 200 soldiers that need to be transported to the Gaza envelope region, and there are only 4 helicopters, we squeeze over 50 soldiers into each helicopter. And there was a picture that my commander took, and you could see me, and you could see all of us squeezed on top of each other like sardines. There were 2 benches along the side, and then in the middle was like a little aisle way, and soldiers were literally sitting one on top of the others, just squeezing in as many as possible. That was the goal. Like push in until we can't fit anymore, and the picture shows exactly.
So, Ira, you survived this, and your group survives this, and then you're not only having these bullets fly all over you. You're moving through Kibbutz
Be'eri.
which was the epicenter of the terrorist attacks. What was that like, and did you come across any live people? Did you save any lives?
Yeah, so Kibbutz Be'eri was the epicenter, or one of the epicenters of October 7th, along obviously with the Northern Music Festival, Nir Oz, Kfar Aza. Be'eri had over 100 residents of its kibbutz who were either killed or taken hostage. For reference, it's one of the larger kibbutzim with a little bit over 1,000. There was just over 10% of the community was taken hostage or killed. We got there around 1:30 p.m. on October 7th, not knowing what was happening. We didn't have our phones since the morning. Literally anything we knew was from our own senses. What we saw and felt with our own eyes and bodies. We walked into Kibbutz Be'eri, and throughout the day we're fighting terrorists. And then as evening came, we transitioned to rescuing families. And our goal was, we were basically told, until the task of rescuing families is complete, our unit is one of those responsible for doing exactly that. So we'd go and take families outside their homes and bring them to safety outside the kibbutz, and from there they'd be taken far, far away from the Gaza envelope.
What was that like when you
rescued families?
Yeah.
So I read this in my book that everything in my service, and I make jokes about how everything from being yelled at by my commanders in training for the stupidest reason to the hardest training weeks there were, it was all worth it for nothing else than those moments. And I talked about a little bit in our previous episode of the podcast, that how truly lucky I was, how fortunate I was to be in Israel at this time, to say, when our people need IDF soldiers most, I get to be in uniform and rescue families, and to actually take a family outside their home and to bring them outside the kibbutz to safety is a feeling you're never gonna know again, because you're so tangibly saving a life. Like we talk about saving lives all the time. How like you were such a mensch to this person. You were just such a great guy, and it really like boosted their day. You're helping to save their life. Actually going to rescue a family outside their home as terrorists are several doors down trying to get to them and trying to get to me and to kill us, and to take them outside to safety, and then to go back inside the kibbutz to do the same thing, you're so tangibly saving a life that I don't even know how to describe it. It's amazing.
Part of my book lays out how to create a meaningful, impactful life.
Yeah.
And at the highest levels, it's a 12 levels, we are totally focused on the other. What is it the other needs? Not asking what we need, what does the other need? And when you're saving a life, it's all about the other.
Yeah.
And that's where we find the deepest sense of satisfaction. The more we ask what I need, it's not a very fulfilling question. People live their whole lives, they live in beautiful bubbles that they've created of pleasure and comfort, but there's a sense of emptiness. But when we ask, what is it that I need? and we provide that. And when you're saving someone's life, it's extraordinary. I mean, it's the highest mitzvah that's possible, saving a life.
Yeah.
And so thank you for your service. And how many lives did your soldiers?
19 rescued tens of families.
Tens of families.
Yeah, like not 10, like 20, like tens,
Right.
We don't know exactly how much. And I'll say that I had part in some of them, and then I had a smaller part in others. To the point where, we had, and I described this in the book, just more of the details, but we had a house in Kibbutz Be'eri that we basically claimed as our home base. And families from the area were rescued, taken there, and we protected them. And then from there, they were taken outside the kibbutz to safety. Some of the times, I would actually go to the houses and rescue the family. And then I was, for a lot of the time, stationed in that house where other members of my team would go rescue families out of their home, bring them back to our home base. We would see them, we would protect them, we would talk to them, and then they would be taken outside the community.
And did you encounter terrorists in your?
Yes, we definitely encountered terrorists. The most intense fighting in Be'eri for me took place in the early hours when I got there. We ended up being the first major unit. I don't know if I mentioned this. I served in the 890th Battalion of the Paratroopers. Our battalion ended up being the first major unit to arrive to Be'eri on October 7th. And what I mean by that is before us, there were some small special forces teams. There were police officers. There was the kibbutz's own security force, which are just members of the community that are called up in an emergency situation. We were a full IDF battalion. We were two companies in our battalion that showed up. We made a huge difference. And I say that all to mean that in the first few hours, we had to be the ones fighting. Like, we were there fighting against terrorists because there wasn't really many other forces around. As the day progressed, many more IDF forces arrived, and the focus shifted, where we were then told that the special forces units that are here and the tanks will be focused on the terrorists and the pockets that we know that they currently are, and we are one of the many teams that will now be focused on rescuing families until that task is done. And I read that how my team took out the last family around 2 a.m. between the night of October 7th and October 8th. And the rest of October 8th, 9th, and then to the early morning of the 10th, we were still in Be'eri. And especially on the 8th, we engaged with terrorists. There were still a lot of terrorists, and the last Hamas terrorist was eliminated on the morning of October 9th.
That's amazing. Ira, I went to Israel twice since October 7th. And I went to Kibbutz Be'eri, and to Kibbutz Niroz, Kibbutz Alumim, Nova Festival site. And it's haunting going there now. And I can't even imagine what it was like. The courage, the strength. And as you said, if it wasn't for the IDF, all these people would have been massacred, saved all these lives. And that's just the beginning of the war. That's just day one that you've been talking about. And then we're subsequently, and we only have another 6 minutes. So you spent 100 days in Gaza.
Yeah, can I tell you something?
Yeah.
Can you pick that up?
Yep.
That's what this is for. I urge all your listeners, seriously, I've always said, I could talk to you, and I actually write that in the first chapter, in the introduction. I say, as much as I could talk to you over a Shabbat dinner, what you're going to read in my book is going to get into a lot more detail. Even the stories that we talked about with the helicopter and fighting in Be'eri, I get into significant more, like you didn't see, because you read it. I get into significantly more detail than we can ever do over a discussion. And, in some ways, to the listeners, it's a little bit of like a teaser. And we didn't even get into Gaza. I read it out in my connection with Omer Neutra, who is a friend of mine from Long Island, who we grew up together. We grew up in the same school, the same synagogue, the same town, really close friends and family friends. And Omer was taken hostage on October 7th. And it really was it really pushed me in ways, and I read that in the book, that towards, it inspired me to continue fighting in Gaza during the toughest moments, because I talked about how how is it that I'm here on the ground with my friends, fighting in an IDF uniform, and Omer is beneath ground, without anyone, with captors who are torturing him. And obviously, we learn later in December of 2024 that Omer was in fact killed on October 7th. But I read a lot about Omer in the book and that what he meant to me before we moved to Israel as we both served in the IDF, and what he really meant to me when he was taken hostage and I was still serving.
So you really suffered a lot of grief. You also talk about two other very close friends who you lost, and you created a charity. So could you share a little bit about the charity?
Two good points. So first, I dedicated the book to Orna Neutra and also to two other friends, Yair Vitan and Amir Naim. Yair Vitan is a friend of mine from my unit who was killed in Gaza. He was genuinely one of my closest friends in the IDF. He was, it's like when you're in school and, you hang out with someone, and if you're going to hang out with them outside of school, it's like they're not just a school friend anymore, they're an actual genuine friend. He was one of the guys in my team that I wouldn't just hang out with on base. When we were outside of base, we would hang out with each other. We did a trip together once in Israel. He was killed on June 28th, 2024 in Sajaya. The other person I dedicated the book to is Amir Naim. Amir was my counselor for Guardian Sabar, which is the Lone Soldier program. He lived on Kibbutz Be'eri, which is where I lived, and he was a part of the Kibbutz's own security team. And Amir, on October 7th, was called up to fight against terrorists who were approaching Kibbutz Be'eri, and he was the only member of the security team who was killed that day. And it's important for me to write about both Yair, Amir, and then obviously Omer as well. And I decided to have a charity for my book where, everyone who reads it in the last page, you could read about, where I want people to donate their money to. And it's Omer Neutra's, basically a legacy preservation charity. It's a charity that basically all the money that's collected, it goes towards initiatives to help continue the life and legacy of Omer. And these initiatives are helping build, for example, at the camp that we both went to, they're building a center for Jewish life. Basically, the center of education for the campus is going to be named in Omer's memory. The money is going to help scholarships for people to go to Israel in Omer's legacy. It's all these initiatives of values that Omer truly believed in, that people can donate money to, and the money goes towards those initiatives. And if you look at the book, I essentially show how you can donate with a description of the charity in the back.
It's very beautiful. Ira, you became close with the Neutra family, with Omer's parents. And I know you were very conflicted when your service ended.
Yeah.
And you wanted to stay until such time that they recovered Omer. You didn't know what was the situation with him. And you decided to leave the service, and you had a very poignant conversation with
Orna
Neutra. Yeah. And what was it that she said to you?
Orna spoke to me in December of December 23, about a week and a half before I was supposed to finish my service. We were about to go inside of Gaza. And I didn't need to go back inside of Gaza because my service was about to come to an end, and we were expected to be inside the strip until after my release date. And Orna said to me, I know you want to go back in. If you go back in, I don't want this to be for Omer. I want this, if you're going to go back in, it's not because you want to rescue Omer, it's because you want to go back in. And I'm just paraphrasing what she said, but the underlying message was that really what I took away is that she doesn't want anything to happen to me in trying to save her son, because God forbid in me trying to save her son, something was to happen for me. I think it was a burden that she would never have wanted to carry for the rest of her life. And I obviously told her in that conversation, it's more than that. It's my team is going back in. We're still fighting in Gaza. I don't want to leave my team. That's what I said. And really deep down, that was a huge part of it. And staying until we rescued Omer was probably the bigger factor.
So you ended your service and came back to the United States.
Yeah.
And here you are now, and you've trying to figure out what's next, and writing this book was a big next step.
For sure.
And do you have any ideas of what may come after?
I'm not sure. I can tell you that right now, I just released my book actually two weeks ago today, so it's very new. My goal for the next about half year is to get this book in the hands of as many readers who are willing to pick it up. That's my goal. I'm looking, and maybe those who are listening to the podcast could help to really, I grew up in Long Island, but to also just get out of the Long Island area, to go and share my book with communities all across the country. And, I'll say those who are Jewish are more willing to listen and to pick it up, and are also more willing to invite me. And at the same time, if any listeners has a connection to a community that isn't Jewish, then might be less willing to pick it up, that wants to invite me, I'm more than happy to talk with them. So that's my goal for the next half year.
It's a tremendous goal. I think you have so much to teach through this book about how to create a life that dedicates something greater than yourself, service of your country, your dedication to your friends who died in service. You're wanting to teach people how to have courage and the importance of defending the Jewish people and the Jewish homeland, and willing to give your life for that. And you have so many incredibly important lessons in here, and this has been deeply inspiring. And I will do my best to try to promote the book. And I think it's for people to read the book, and your children to read the book, to dedicate themselves to something bigger than themselves, to find a sense of meaning and purpose that will truly help the world that we live in. So, Ira, thank you for your service. Thank you for sharing so honestly,
thank you,
poignantly, and powerfully. And you're truly a tremendous inspiration. I found myself complaining about a few little discomforts in the last few days, and having been immersed in your book, I was like, okay, Ira went through that. It doesn't matter. It's insignificant. You gave me perspective and fired me up to even do more than what I'm doing right now. So thank you again all for tuning in to Habits of a Whole Heart on this episode, riveting episode with Ira Kohler, as part of my podcast, Habits of a Whole Heart, and the larger Humanity Matters series on hmTV through the Holocaust Memorial Tolerance Center. Thank you for tuning in. Please spread the word about these podcasts. Please buy Ira's book, Once a Paratrooper, and please do all you can to live the meaningful, impactful life that you're meant to live. Thank you very much, and have a great day.